Good morning, fourth graders. Today is Tuesday, April 21st, 2020. And we're back at it for our book, The City of Ember. Ask yourself, what was happening in our story? What is going on? Remember Lena and Dune went down into the pipeworks. They found a hidden door. Somebody was there. We're not sure who it is. She's back home with Poppy drawing for the first time using her brand new, very expensive colored pencils and some labels on some cans that was still white that they could probably draw on. All right, so sometime deep that night, Lena woke suddenly thinking she heard something. Had she been dreaming? She lay still, her eyes open in the darkness. The sound came again, a weak, trembling call. Lena? She got up and started for Granny's room. Though she had lived in the same house all her life, she still had trouble finding her way at night when the darkness was absolutely complete. It was as if walls had shifted slightly and furniture moved to new places. Lena stayed close to the walls, feeling her way. Here was her bedroom door. Here was the kitchen and the table. She winced as she stubbed her toe on one of its legs. A little farther, and she come to the far wall and the door to Granny's room. Granny's voice was like a thin line of dark air. Lena, come and help. I need you. I'm coming, Granny. Hold on, she called. She stumbled over something, a shoe perhaps, and fell against the bed. Here I am, Granny, she said. She felt for Granny's hand. It was extremely cold. I feel so strange, said Granny. Her voice was a whisper. I dreamed about my baby, or someone's baby. Lena sat down on the bed. Carefully, she moved her hands over the narrow ridge of her grandmother's body until she came to her shoulders. There, her fingers tangled in the long wisps of Granny's hair. She pressed a finger against the side of Granny's throat to feel her pulse as the doctor had shown her. It was fluttery, like a moth that was hurt itself and is flapping in crooked circles. Can I get you some water, Granny? Lena asked. She couldn't think what else to do. No, Granny said, just stay for a while. Lena tucked one foot underneath her and pulled part of the blanket over her lap. She took hold of Granny's hand again and stroked it gently with one finger. For a long time, neither of them said anything. Lena sat listening to her grandmother's breathing. She would take a deep, shuddering breath and let it out in a sigh. Then there'd be a long silence before the next breath began. Lena closed her eyes. No use keeping them open. There was nothing to see but the dark. She was aware only of her grandmother's cold, thin hand and the sound of her breathing. Every now and then Granny would mumble a few words Lena couldn't make out, and then Lena would stroke her forehead and say, Don't worry. It's all right, Granny. It's almost morning, though she didn't really know if it was or not. After a long time, Granny stirred slightly and seemed to come awake. Oh, go to bed, dear, she said. I'm all right now. Her voice was clear but very faint. You go back to sleep. Lena bent forward until her head rested against Granny's shoulder. Granny's soft hair tickled her face. All right then, she said. Good night, Granny. She squeezed her grandmother's shoulders gently, and as she stood up, a wave of terrible loneliness swept over her. She wanted to see Granny's face, but the darkness hid everything. It might still be a long time until morning. She didn't know. She groped her way back to her own bed and fell into a deep sleep, and when hours later the clock tower struck 6 and the lights came on, Lena went fearfully into her grandmother's room. She found her very pale and very still. All the life had gone out of Granny. Chapter 2 is called Lizzie's Groceries. Lena spent all that day in Mrs. Murdo's house, which was just like theirs, only much neater. There was one couch and one fat chair covered in fuzzy striped material and one big table, only Mrs. Murdo's table wasn't wobbly like theirs. On the table was a basket, and in the basket were 3 turnips, each of them lavender on one end and white on the other. Mrs. Murdo must have put them there, Lena thought, not just because she was going to have them for dinner, but because they were actually beautiful. Lena sat sideways on the couch with her legs stretched out, and Mrs. Murdo covered her with a soft gray-green blanket. This will keep you warm, she said, tucking it around Lena's legs. Lena didn't really feel cold, Lena didn't really feel cold, but she did feel sad, which was in a way the same thing. The blanket felt good, like someone holding her. Mrs. Murdo gave Poppy a long purple scarf to play with and made a creamy mushroom soup with potatoes, and all day Lena stayed there, snuggled under the blanket. She thought about her grandmother, who had a long and most cheerful life. She cried some and fell asleep, and she woke up and played with Poppy. The day had a strange but comforting feel to it, like a rest between the end of one time and the beginning of another. On the morning of the next day, Lena got up and got ready to go to work. Mrs. Murdo gave her beet tea and spinach hash for breakfast. The singing's coming up soon, she remarked to Lena. Do you know your part? Yes, said Lena. I remember it pretty well from last year. Oh, said Mrs. Murdo, I rather like the singing. I love it, said Lena. I think it's my favorite day of the year. Once a year, the people of the city came together to sing the 3 great songs of Ember. Just thinking of it made Lena feel better. She finished her breakfast and put on her red jacket. Don't worry about Poppy, said Mrs. Murdo. I'll take care of her. When you come back this evening, we'll talk about how to proceed. Proceed? Asked Lena. Well, you can't live by yourselves, just the 2 of you, can you? We can't, said Lena. Well, certainly not, said Mrs. Murdo. Who's to take care of Poppy while you go off delivering messages? You must move in here with me. I have an empty bedroom after all, and quite a nice one. Come and look. She opened a door in the far end of the living room and Lena peeked in. She had never seen such a beautiful, cozy room. There was a big, lumpy bed covered with a faded blue blanket, and its head 4 plump pillows. Next to the bed was a chest of drawers with drawer handles shaped like teardrops, and a mirror attached to the top. The carpets on the floor were all different shades of blue and green, and in the corner was a sturdy square table and a chair with a back like a ladder. This'll be your room, said Mrs. Murdo. Yours and Poppy's. You'll have to share the bed, but it's plenty big enough. It's lovely, said Lena. You're too kind, Mrs. Murdo. Well, she said, it's just common sense. You need a place and I have one. You go on now, and I'll see you this evening. 3 days had passed since Lena and Doone had seen the man in the pipeworks, and there hadn't been any special announcements. So if that man had discovered a way out of Ember, he was keeping the news to himself. Lena couldn't understand why. As Lena ran through the city with her messages on her first day back to work, it seemed to her that the mood of the people was even gloomier than before. There were long, silent lines at the markets and knots of people gathered in the squares, talking in low voices. Many shops, more each day it seemed, displayed signs on their windows saying closed, or open only Mondays, or only Tuesdays. Every now and then, the lights flickered and people stopped and looked up in fright. When the flickering ended and the lights stayed lit, people just took a breath and walked on. Lena delivered her messages as usual, but inside she felt strange. Everywhere she ran, she heard the same words like a drumbeat in her mind. Alone in the world, alone in the world. It wasn't exactly true. She had Poppy, she had friends, and she had Mrs. Murdo, who was somewhere between a friend and a relative, but she felt as if she had suddenly gotten older in the last 3 days. She was a sort of mother herself now. What happened to Poppy was more or less up to her. As the day went on, she stopped thinking alone in the world and began thinking about her new life at Mrs. Murdo's. She thought about the blue-green room and planned how she would arrange her pictures on the walls. The one she'd drawn with her blue pencil would look especially nice because it would match the color of the rugs. She could bring her pillows from home and add them to the ones on the bed, and then she'd have 6 pillows altogether, and maybe she could find some old blue dresses or shirts and make pillow covers for them. The blue-green room, the orderly apartment, the meals cooked and the blankets tucked cozily at night, all this gave her a feeling of comfort, almost luxury. She was grateful for Mrs. Murdo's kindness. I'm not ready yet to be alone in the world, she thought. Late that afternoon, Lena was given a message to take to Lampley Street. She delivered the message, and as she was coming back onto the street, she caught sight of Lizzie coming out the door of the supply depot. Her orange hair was unmistakable. "Lizzie!" Lena called out. Lizzie must not have heard her. She kept on going. Lena called again. "Hey, Lizzie, wait!" This time it was clear that Lizzie had heard, but instead of stopping, she walked faster. What's the matter with her, Lena wondered. She ran after her and grabbed the back of her coat. "Hey, Lizzie, it's me!" Lizzie stopped and turned around. Oh, she said. Her face was flushed. "It's you. Hi, I thought it was, I didn't realize it was you." She smiled brightly, but there was a distracted look in her eyes. "I was, just going home," she said. Her arms were wrapped around a small, bulging sack. I'll walk with you," said Lena. "Oh," said Lizzie. Good." But she didn't look very pleased. "Lizzie, something sad has happened," Lena said. "My grandma died." Lizzie gave her a quick sideways glance, but she didn't stop walking. "Oh," she said. "Poor you. That's too bad." What? What was wrong with her? Lizzie was ordinary, so interested in other people's misfortunes. She could be sincerely sympathetic, too, when she wasn't wrapped up in her own troubles. Lena changed the subject. "What's in the sack?" she asked. Just some groceries," said Lizzie. "I stopped at the market after work, yeah." "You did?" Lena was confused. She had seen Lizzie not 2 minutes ago leaving the storeroom office. Lizzie didn't answer. She began walking and talking quite fast. It was so busy today at work. Work is so hard, isn't it, Lena? I just think work is much harder than school and not as interesting. You do the same thing every day, and I get so tired. Yes, don't you get tired running all around? Lena started to say like she liked running, but Lizzie didn't wait for her to answer. Oh, well, at least there are some good things about it. Guess what, Lena? I have a boyfriend. I met him at work, yes. He really likes me. He says my hair's the exact color of a red-hot burner on the stove. Lena laughed. It's true, Lizzie. You look like your head is on fire. So Lizzie laughed, too, and lifted one hand to fluff her hair. She puckered her lips and fluttered her eyelashes. He says, my hair's like a tomato. They were crossing Torque Square now. It was crowded in the square. People had just left work and were lining up the shops and hurrying along with packages. A cluster of children sat on the pavement playing a sort of game. Who's the boyfriend? Asked Lena. But just at that moment, Lizzie tripped. She had been strutting along, being beautiful, not paying attention to her feet, and the edge of her shoe caught on an uneven place in the pavement. She staggered and fell, and as she fell, she lost her grip on that sack. It hit the ground and toppled sideways. And lo and behold, what do you suppose fell out of that bag? That's where we're going to stop. See you guys tomorrow.